Hey, friends and neighbors, countrymen, and barrel chested freedom fighters, back here with Mark Blazek of I-Corps LRSC, talking about his time overseas in Fort Hood and his many misadventures and adventures. Mark, I think,
Indeed. I
yeah.
must correct you. Three quarters, not I core. But
Oh, man, I did say I-Corps, didn't I? Man, my
other
bad.
than that, excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
So talking Halo school, um, I re-enlisted for it on a handshake.
Mm.
And obviously anybody watching this video probably knows that is the number one dumbest thing you could possibly do in your entire life. You never re-enlist on a handshake. Um, so with my skydiving experience and my love of free fall, I very much wanted to go. Being in a LRS unit, we knew we had possibly the opportunity. I was untabbed, so I should be at the absolute bottom of the list. But when we were in Iraq, people started enlisting for it, or re-enlisting for it for a place on an OML,
Mm-hmm.
which literally is just a counseling statement saying, we'll
We're
try to
thinking
send you.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we switched not just commanders when we came back, but actually became holding unit, right? We that deployment we were with the 163rd Military Intelligence Battalion, and then shortly after we came back, they stood up Second Squadron, 38th Cavalry. So it wasn't just a change of command; it was entirely different organization, still under the 504th. There were probably about 10 people that re-enlisted for the OML, and then nobody fought for it, which is what blew my mind. A lot of these dudes came back and were like, "Oh, you're not sending me to school? Okay, I'll leave." And then they PCS'd. Um, what I don't know if all these people had what I had. I assume they did. I got 12 months stability. So it was
Mhm.
I got 12 months. I gotta fit it into this. And I started making my case as soon as we came off leave. Open door first sergeant was like, hey, yada yada yada, I need to do this, whatever. And to his credit, he was like, okay, you can, bypass your chain, tell me what you need to do. Like, let's get you this, let's get you that. And that's how, as an infantryman, you go and ask for a flight physical, they're going to laugh at you,
Yeah.
at least on Fort Hood.
Yeah, they
Uh,
will. Yeah.
yeah, but he facilitated that. Eventually got us the chamber ride. And like I said, I wasn't the top of the OML. Oh, again, I said I was going to name names. Uh, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Soller, 163rd, is the one that signed it, that
Hmm.
said, hey, I will try and get you there. I'll name the other name later because the promise was upheld and those men should be recognized. Uh, so I get through all the things I need to do. I get the flight physical somehow. The only thing I need is the chamber ride. That's and an ATAR state.
Yeah.
Finally, I don't remember when that was. It must have been like March or something. We'd been back since August. They get us chamber rides, and I was actually on like a pass at the time, like a 4 day. It was like a normal weekend, but I had like a 4 day. I don't know why, whatever. My sister was graduating at Lackland, and they wound up getting us chamber rides at Randolph, or not Randolph, excuse me, at Brooks City Base, also in San Antonio. Um, and every single person I'm down there with is E7 or higher, half officers, mostly E7s, and then there's
Yeah.
Specialist Blazek hanging out. Um, we do the chamber ride, come back. Um, and at this point, I think I was the last person in the company that hadn't PCS that was still on the OML, and we got a slot. Like it
Yeah.
actually came down. Um, I was not the only person that went to the chamber. There was at least two of these sevens who had skydiving experience. One of
Mhm.
them significant experience. Um, he was he had a couple more jumps than me, a couple hundred, not enough to make you an expert, but enough that he was definitely ahead of me. Um, and they wound up because I'd been to Iraq and re-enlisted for it. They gave me the slot.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah, and I sat on that slot for quite a while. It was one of the weirdest years of my life. I got my EIB, which is awesome.
Mm.
I went to Halo. I remember right before. Well, I'll tell that piece later. Essentially, skipping to the ATAR slot, about 2 weeks before I go, I get an email that says my slot's been revoked. And I guarantee you somebody at school was like E4 11 Bravo, hell no, we're gonna throw some 18 series in there.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I not that I didn't have any business going in the sense I had the skill and all that, but LRSC units were never going to be able to conduct, at least as they were
Yeah.
attached to core.
Big
And
Army was never going to let us do a free fall
yeah, yeah. It wasn't going to happen. So, like, technically speaking, I'm sure those guys had definitely more business than me being there. But anyway, again, the open door thing. I walked straight to first sergeant and was like, here's the paper. They just revoked my slot. He was like, okay, let's go. And we walked straight down to squadron, basically directly into the squadron commander's office. And he showed him it and was like, okay, I'll get this fixed. And the crazy thing about HR slots, I don't, I'm going to gloss over the details. I don't know all of them. It usually takes somewhere in the ballpark of like 2 weeks getting an HR slot for anything. Doesn't matter if it's airborne, air assault, whatever. My slot came back in an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. This guy, who also needs to be recognized, our squadron commander at the time, Lieutenant Colonel David Jones, kept Soller's promise and not only got me that slot, but defended it when it needed to be defended and got me to school.
That's awesome.
My brigade totally screwed me. They said I could just pick up housing when I went to Halo. Like, oh yeah, it's easy to get into the airborne in. That was a lie.
Yeah.
I was actually prepared to. I was going to sleep with my bags in front of the wind tunnel and let the first instructor in come and just kick me. I was going to be homeless for the night.
Well,
fortunately, one of my buddies who was waiting on a 18 Charlie school to open up was working staff duty nearby. I called everybody. I called everybody I could think of on Fort Bragg and could not find a way to. Everybody's either deployed or didn't answer the phone or whatever. And finally, I called Brian, the guy I started skydiving with. He's like, "Would you call Bert?" I was like, "Oh, I forgot about Bert." Who had been my roommate like 3 months prior. I just didn't even think. I assumed he was in the Q course. I just didn't even think.
Assumed he's out at Camp McCall doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually is like, I'm on staff duty like a couple blocks away. I tell you what, walk south to the first street and then walk west, and I'll be out on. I'll wave at you. It's like, okay. And he wound up driving me around. I slept in his closet most of that week. Yeah, it was insane. They didn't give me a rental car. They didn't give me a hotel. They didn't give me a rental car at Yuma either. They were like, "Oh yeah, no, it's a post. You can walk around." Anybody that's ever been to YPG knows it's like 30 miles from Yuma.
Yeah.
It's like day one of school. Me, looking around. Everybody there's got a green beanie. We got a SEAL in the class. There's a bunch of dudes in the PJ pipeline. There's one other 11 Bravo, but he's an E7 and he works for like
USASOC or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, nobody that's anywhere close to my ballpark. So I did what I think anybody would do. I made friends with the Air Force real fast, and they took care of me. There's a PJ named Paul, again, needs recognition, who was like, he was an E7, he was converting over from his previous MOS.
Yeah.
And he, did the come under the wing, little guy. I got you. So
got you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, he took care of me. But yeah, so I managed to get orders and I got to school and somehow survived not having housing or a vehicle or whatever.
Yeah, being basically an abandoned child.
I was legitimately, I was going to camp out, like, because your report date, that was, now they have a wind tunnel in Arizona. Back then it was still the wind tunnel at Bragg. I was literally just going to sleep in front of the door and make some instructor wake me up. But what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm going to graduate this course. I'm here. So. yeah, that was an experience, but
Yeah. Well,
that whole thing.
yeah, that's a freaking awesome story, man. So
It was wild, you know, and I'd never been to Bragg before, so it's not like fortunately I knew a bunch of people at PCS there,
yeah.
and I mean, and fortunately I had the one, but I mean, if I had, I would have, whatever, I would have bivouacked in front of the in front of the wind tunnel and called it a day.
That'd be one of those. That'd be a good instructor story. Like, hey man, yeah, there's a dude camped out in front of the wind tunnel. He wants his slot pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah, that was cool. I mean, the interesting thing to me was once I got to know the guys, and I didn't know this, with LRSC was shutting down, right? They were closing all the units,
Yeah.
and then they decided to stand it up, and there was actually an overlap between the two. And Echo 51st actually stood down, I want to say either right before or right after I got to Hood, which again was years before we actually activated and deployed. Um, and come to find out, like you know, there were people chatting me up because I'm odd duck. Um, and a lot of them were, you know, 18 series. Most of these guys had been to Echo, um, which Echo 51st Germany.
Yeah.
I guess when the unit shut down, everybody either ETS'd or what they told me is essentially most of the company dropped a packet.
Yeah.
So they all went to selection together and they all graduated together.
Yeah. That's
So
that's cool.
as small as the LRSC community is, it was crazy to me that I go to Halo and like half the dudes there are like, oh yeah, we're an Echo company. We get it.
Yeah.
Like you're lucky to go as an E4, but yeah, we get it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, all right. So I did wind up making some friends.
Living the Lurse life.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Man, that's pretty cool spirit. But yeah, I mean, doing the deal, man.
It
Yeah.
was it was interesting. I actually came down on orders. I hit my true to the 1 year to the day of my reenlistment, or no, of us getting back because it was my 1 year stability. Um, I came down on orders for bomb holder,
Mm-hmm.
172nd, I think,
Yeah.
whatever the mech brigade out there was.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to make a call back and uh, basically got transferred to my first cert. It was like, do you want to go? I was like, you know, I wanted to jump in with the Lurs company, which
Yeah.
ultimately never happened.
Yeah.
I'm still a 25 jump chump as far as military free fall goes.
Yeah. So you never
But
got to do free fall after that.
never. I did get put on status, and then I ETS'd prior to them the next month after I ETS. They did their first free fall.
But when you came over Texas Guard, you were on the demo team there
Yeah,
for
I jumped with the demo team for 3-ish years. Only did one demo. We had some that got canceled for various reasons. I mean, you got to get put on a paid status in order to go out, so things get complicated. And yeah, I did.
that was mostly 19th group guys anyway. So
No, actually, most of them were from the 143rd.
were they?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was originally. There have been a bunch of 19th group guys on it,
Mm-hmm.
but at least for the time I was there, it was mostly 143rd. I mean, the most we ever had was like 6 active members, and we were you only really needed 3 for an air show because you're, you know, jumping like the Texas flag, POW flag, and the
Yeah.
American flag. So, um, yeah, so I definitely free fall, you know, military aircraft, but not military free fall, not
Yeah.
haloed. So,
Hey man, you got the chest candy. That is what it is.
yeah, yeah, and that was one of the interesting things is that always cracked me up, and I kind of I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. Is I had a lot of uh, both peers and superiors that when they'd walk by me on any random day, they'd come over and be like, "Hey man, I just want to touch it." Yeah, quite a few people that I mean, it's a point of pride. I still to this day don't know how I you know managed to get there. Um,
you know,
and
it's the luck of the draw, man.
yeah,
Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time and shit happens.
and that's what it was. Oh, and that's I said this in the last the other half we did. Um, I was asked when my slot was pulled by Colonel Jones, you're going to pass this, right? And what I said before was what I said. Essentially, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like, yes, sir, I have more than 200 jumps, and this is easy. I'm
Yeah.
no problem. He was like, Roger that,
Yeah.
you know. So
We were talking about earlier. We were talking about Iraq and Afghanistan. You said you wanted to jump back on that on the spring offensive.
yeah, couple of interesting stories. The spring offensive one specifically. Uh, I want to say, I'm not sure exactly. I want to say it was a couple days after Christmas, but like before New Year's. We did a mission, and we had done so many stupid missions in Afghanistan where it was go look at this cave. We found it on satellite, and we think there might be something in it, and there was never anything.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to name any names. I'm not saying whether these are team ops, platoon ops, or company ops. There's a cat climbing on my chair.
That happens.
Um, right. Uh, but we had taken to if a like a pink team showed up
Mm-hmm.
at a fortuitous time, basically having the sorry,
That's all.
base basically having the Kiowa come in, land, and then having somebody go talk to the pilot because we weren't putting on the radio,
Mm-hmm.
being like, "Hey, can we just give you a camera? You fly up, you snap pictures of this, and then you fly back." And you know, warrants being warrants, every single time they're like, "No problem, we got you."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that saved us a couple of caves, but we had some absolutely brutal, brutal rucks up mountains, both night and broad daylight, that just sucked.
Yeah.
Um, so we got this one, and part of it was we had a LEP with us from DEA. Part of it was going after this town and some opium production, and then the other part was, go check out this cave.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a terrible climb, but it was low ways outside of town. So, well, part of the company, or correction, part of the platoon on this one is, pucking up this dude and taking his opium. We roll a couple K outside of town to this big cave you can kind of see on a hillside. It's above us, but it's not, like I said, it wasn't a bad hike. It was,
Yeah.
we parked in one spot, walked a couple 100 meters, not too much elevation cave, probably the easiest cave we ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I'm coming up to it, I both drove lead and had the Valen for everything.
Yeah.
Um, and I had been to tracking school beforehand, multiple tracking schools. That was part of the thing before we
Yeah.
went to Afghanistan.
Forgot about that. That was one of your big things, man.
Yeah, we got every, I won't say everybody in the company. I would bet you two-thirds of our company were trained trackers. And um, TTOS, the organization uh, out of Huachuca that teaches that course, they're extremely good. Some of the best training I've ever had. But anyway, we're walking up, and on the trail up there, I see this puddle of piss, and it's still got bubbles in it.
Ooh, it's fresh.
Yo, yeah, right. So basically, how I signed it to my team is I, dropped the valve and kind of not, wasn't aiming at anything with my M4, brought it up, and everybody else is starting to look around. We never found the guy, no clue where he went to.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like a human piss pattern.
That
No
hair
goats.
goes up on the back of your neck. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh shit. Start looking around. The cave had like a lip on it and couldn't quite see it. So like after like clearing the immediate area, basically just treated it like near ambush and like sprinted up there.
Mm-hmm.
And all we see in this cave is just bags upon bags of fertilizer. Um, and we reported it. We had EOD with us at the time. We took the EOD guys with us. Um, I wish I had the picture to share with you. I don't know where it's at now, but of after we bipped it. Um, well, I guess I'm skipping ahead. So they wire it. We're like, looking for permission to bip it and all that. And we get the call back that, Tracker 6 wants to come out, check it out. And he's, bringing out dudes with him, whatever. And we're beat, multi-day operation.
Yeah.
Basically, half my team goes back to the truck. EOD's not carrying a radio, so I stay with them. And it's literally me and the two EOD guys sitting out there. And my team back in the trucks with like one guy on the gun and everybody else is just racked out.
Yeah.
Um, and it must have been like 3 hours because I had to,
Yeah.
get QRF and get command staff together, get Afghan Border Patrol and their commander and whatnot. And we didn't really know ABP was coming, but they had to kind of cross this route in front of us from like left to right before they like came into where we were at. And there was a hillside that kind of covered the left side, so we couldn't see their approach. And as they start driving up, we just see just ABP truck after ABP truck. And the EOD staff sergeant goes, man, we're not going to get to blow this. They're going to take it. They're going to seize it. And we all knew that just prior to us getting there, Fox Company had seized some SBES. And those SBES had gotten turned over to ABP. And then those SBES were found in the tunnels below a major jailbreak that happened in Kandahar City a couple months later. The exact same SBES. So with this in the back of our minds, we're like, they're going to seize it, which means it's all going to get used against us. Damn, like just we were angry. We were angry. And we watch them park, and they'd parked kind of like around the corners. They had to like make this looped infill. And again, we were up on a lip. They couldn't see what we were doing. Let me backtrack one more time slightly. I went to take a piss about 2 hours into this, and the EOD guy was like, hey man, why don't you just piss on the bomb? I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, no, it's cool. Like, when do you get a chance to do this again? So I pissed on it. He had already pissed on it. The other EOD guy had pissed on it.
He marked the
And we're
territory.
yeah, they estimated it at 17,000 pounds of HME. Basically, it was the whole spring offensive.
Wow.
Yeah. It was massive. So we watched them come around the corner, and me and Mackie, I think it clicked at the exact same time. Like, got the bags. So we're climbing through our own piss on top of these fertilizer bags, just slashing everything we could see, trying to open it, with the hopes that they'll take one look at it and be like, yeah, screw it, blow it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They let them blow it. Command staff came in, took all their pictures, got out. I'm still hanging out with these two. They wire it. Me and the specialist moved down because essentially what we're going to do is try and I think they'd have 5-minute fuse on it. Try and move down and then go a couple train features over along this hillside we're on. So we were a little bit down. Staff sergeant wires it, lights it, yells at me because again radio. So I call I call Lucky Six, my company commander. Hey, 5 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
He sprints down. We all come down and we're like close to the trucks. We've got about a minute to spare. And this is dumb and probably where a lot of my tinnitus comes from. But the staff sergeant's like, hey man, looking at me, and the specialist is like, you guys want to be inside for this or outside? And we're both like, outside. So we go over the last terrain feature, and we're probably 50 feet or something from the trucks. But back to the ridge line, I think we were three draws over or whatever. And he gives me 30 seconds, like right after we sit down. I pass that to Six, and then it goes off, and like the world's biggest shotgun, this thing shot boulders straight out for like a K&a-half. And the craziest thing I've ever seen is that Kandahar moon dust. All the dust on the ground jumped like 1.5 feet, like basically to my eye level because I was sitting down, but like jumped and then just kind of fizzled. back down to ground level. I don't know if anybody has that on video, but I got a picture after the fact. Um, we went into verify and we're just walking through this giant yellow cloud. I remember asking him, I was like, hey, dude, oh, hey, Sergeant, should we have gas masks for this? And he was like, yeah, probably. Just kept walking into it. So when I get cancer, that's where it's from. But anyway, that's how Second Platoon found and neutralized a good portion, at least, of the Taliban's Kandahar 2012 spring offensive.
Well, that probably left a pretty big size hole in the ground.
I mean, even when we were there, I couldn't see that well. It was all gone, but like the the dust and smoke and whatever was just absolutely insane when we walked into and out of this place.
Mm,
So
that's pretty cool.
yeah, that was that was cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you were doing pretty good, and you were rocking and rolling, living the Lurch life, and then you came and joined Seco.
Yeah, I got tired of not getting promoted on active duty, so I decided to do the same thing in the National Guard for a while.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, it's interesting having lived both sides of it. I mean, I think that especially with like Lurs taking the Rip and Swit guys, I was fortunate to serve with a bunch of very motivated guys who already had certain requirements like high GT scores and stuff that just made that company amazing.
yeah. What
And I
place?
saw the same thing on the guard side, but the difference to me that I think is severely underrated in the guard is like your Joes when you're on active duty are all 18-year-olds with no life experience. And I fully admit I was one of those. I joined straight out of high school and, that was my only life experience. When you get into the guard and you realize you've got like Joes that are flying 757s,
Yeah,
your company commander is a partner in an accounting firm, your XO is a chiropractor, um, your other Joes are long-term welders, a ton of first responders, uh, cops, firefighters, whatever. It's interesting because I think people in the guard aren't as good at necessarily the military skills,
mhm.
but the life experience brings an entirely different perspective and decision making ability that changes everything. It changes the dynamic a lot, but yeah, both of those companies were excellent for very different ways. Um, yeah, I came to the guard. I did 3 years there. Um, my platoon sergeant from my Afghanistan tour was there,
Yeah,
as well as one of my peers. I left there as an ATL, or left active duty as an ATL. And I remember my platoon sergeant Trevor saying essentially something to the effect of, "Well, you missed the military, yeah. So the cool thing about the guard is you show up, you hate it because it sucks, and then about 4 weeks later, you start to miss it again because you want to hang out with the boys. And then you show up, it sucks. You remember why you hate it, and you repeat the cycle." And he was absolutely right.
yeah,
You show up and you're like, this is stupid. Why do I, whatever. A couple weeks later, you're like, man, I wish I was still in the army. And you
yeah.
keep doing that. Um,
Well, I
and
mean,
yeah, I mean, you still get to play with guns, jump out of airplanes, and
and do planning because when we went out to for Golden Coyote in Wyoming, and I was a platoon sergeant on that one.
yeah,
You were young. I can't remember if you were E4 or E5. I want to
I was
say
E5.
you were
Yeah,
E5, and you were a team leader, and your planning was phenomenal. It was,
yeah. I mean, that goes back to, I think, as I had said in the other part, Chris pitching us off orders,
yeah,
um, straight out of 2176, the Ranger Handbook. Um, and I guess to you or, whoever ultimately made the call, demonstrate that proficiency is, my ATL was an E5 with a tab. I was a TL without a tab. and then all of my peers for that particular AT were sixes with tabs.
Yeah.
Um, experience, I mean, like I said, I think, and some of them were guard babies. Some of them were also, bad boys.
Yeah.
Um, there was a multitude of different experience, but
Yeah.
um,
There was a lot of great dudes in that company.
yeah, yeah. Um, I would say we had a good platoon, but all three of those platoons were good.
Oh yeah.
It was
The difference is,
it, it was interesting to me because, like when I was on active duty, like my first two tours, or my only two tours, but like Iraq, we had one platoon, third platoon. They called themselves the Wrecking Crew. They were the best in the company, and everybody knew it, and it just was what it was. And it was interesting to see it from the side of the fence. Where like, oh, I'm not one of the cool guys. And then my second tour, getting to be in what we called the Boldak Saints,
Mhm.
we were the go-to.
Yeah.
Like one of our TLs from there wound up going and playing with the big boys at Bragg.
Yeah.
Um, I mean that Trevor was the platoon sergeant for that, and all of our other TLs went on to do great things. Also, it was interesting deployed. We didn't have enough people, so there were definitely like, I mean, we only had three teams, and sometimes we rolled heavy teams with 7 or 8 members. But and then in the guard, you look at some of those guys with the backgrounds they had and what they were, able to do, and
Well, one thing I liked
yeah,
about the guard and was within the platoons, second platoon, third, and even third platoon, we would cross. I mean, because of the way the deployment cycle worked, a lot of times we would cross stack. Because I think you were in the first platoon when I was a second platoon sergeant for second platoon, but you were a team leader for me in Golden Coyote.
we only took one platoon out there.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the thing is, at that point in the guard, it was kind of like if you went to school, which we had lots of school opportunities, but if you went to school, you were not going to AT.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's frequently the same way. Of those 3 years, I only did one AT. I had the opportunity to go to the second. Um, I was told I couldn't go because I'd gone to jump master. Um, and then I got a call. I think it was from you. I'm not sure about that. I don't remember who I was talking to, but somebody was like, "Hey, turns out we have slots. You want to go to AT?" I was like, "Yeah," after having done Wyoming, and
It might have been Davin that called you. I can't. Yeah.
it could have been. It might have been Josh too. I like I don't remember, but after having done this Wyoming AT, which was amazing, some of the best training I've ever done, to be honest. I mean, we got 2 jumps in, did a full mission profile, which frankly, we didn't even really do on active duty. I think that might have been the second one I ever did in like a true training environment.
Yeah.
And with the first one being when I was in SSO, like before Iraq. Um, but anyway, whoever it was called me and was like, "Hey, you want to go to AT?" Like, "Yeah, that sounds cool. Where are you going?" JRTC. I was like, "No, I'm busy." Um, yeah, so
That JRTC sucked, but you
I
know
skated
what?
them.
We did some great stuff, and we got a lot of kudos from Big Army.
I
And
yeah, I I've already been. I was like, I've been once before Afghanistan. Like, I'm good. I don't need to do that.
but I did enjoy the fact that we captured Mars, all of Marsok's food supply. That was awesome.
Yeah, I've heard again, this is me telling secondhand, but some good stories from that. Like I had a Joe, um, Edward, who there's a story about him like in one of the mount towns, like on the roof of a mosque, like killing an entire platoon of 2 para by himself.
That was mine.
Like,
Yeah, I was there. The Brits were using some very nasty language towards us. They were very unhappy with us that day.
yeah.
It was
Uh,
a good time. Hey,
dude,
Mark, I hate to cut this short. We've got about 2 minutes left. Just kind of giving you a heads up.
gotcha.
But
Okay.
God, yeah, that was God. We had some good times, and then Big Army said you're all going away.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's possible we're coming back. I don't know
Oh,
if you've been. Yeah, it's been on some sheets in the last year or so. The first one being the MTO for the 11th Airborne when it came out.
yeah.
So there's still some hope. And last time it happened, it was literally the units that were getting closed had not closed before they were standing up the new ones. So um,
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but when we got shut down, we were getting ready to stand up another company.
Yeah, I did know about that.
Yeah, we were going to
Um,
bring back Golf Company 143rd, and we were going to go from Charlie Company 3rd 124th Cab to Echo Company, uh, Echo Company 143rd. But man,
Gotcha. Well, I assume we're super short, but thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
I
This,
got stories for days. You ever want more? Let me know.
hey, I'll take you up on it.
It's
And
always good catching up with you.
absolutely. And for those of you out there watching Tales from Patrol Base, please comment, like, and subscribe. We appreciate all of it.